Hi, guys. Welcome to the How I Raised It podcast, the show where you get an unfiltered inside look at how real entrepreneurs raise capital for their businesses. I'm your host, Nathan Beckert, and today's episode is with Carolyn Childers and Lindsay Kaplan of Chief.com. Chief is a private membership network focused on women executive leaders. Chief has raised a whopping $140 million, and we go through each round, seed, Series A, Series B, and unpack exactly how they did it. If you're tuning into this podcast to learn how to raise capital for your business, I have a free welcome package for you. It includes a list of 2,500 investors who don't require a warm intro, plus 200 questions that investors are going to ask you. It's really going to help you get ready to raise capital. To get instant access to this, please click the link in the first comment. And while you're there, please leave us a nice comment, what you like about this episode or this series in general. We really, really appreciate that. Last but not least, if you enjoy this conversation and think someone else would too, please share it with them and hit that subscribe button to get all our latest episodes. Thank you. Now sit back and enjoy the chat with the Chief.com founders.
Welcome to How I Raised It, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with entrepreneurs who've raised capital. We uncover the tips, tricks, and techniques they use to get investors to write a check. Strap in and turn it up.
Hi, welcome to another episode of How I Raised It, produced by Foundersuite.com. Today I have Carolyn Childers and Lindsay Kaplan of Chief coming to us from New York. How's your day going, ladies?
It's going very well. It's now quite hot these days, so can't complain.
Yeah, New York has a special kind of hot when it's really muggy and hot and everything just feels dirty and grimy sometimes. But I love New York. Don't get me wrong. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Let's just jump right into what you guys do. What is Chief?
Yeah, so Chief is a vetted professional network focused on senior professional women. So we really focus on women who are, the simplest way to describe it is VP level and above. And we started Chief because Lindsay and I were both getting more senior in our careers, and we were spending all of our time managing teams and mentoring people and kind of no longer had resources for ourselves, which is this big irony because as you're in leadership, the decisions that you're making have such bigger implications. And yet the resources in the community kind of dries up as you get more senior. And the old adage of it gets lonely at the top, but it gets lonely at the top a lot earlier for women. And so we decided to fix that by starting a network specifically focused on senior executive women. We launched in 2019, and we are now close to 15,000 members across the US.
That's big growth in two to 3 years. Very interesting. So I'm a rising executive woman. What am I doing in this network? What am I getting out of it? All that stuff.
Yeah. So it's an annual membership model where she joins. 70% of our members are actually sponsored by their companies. And after you join, you get access to a whole suite of services as part of Chief. But the number one thing that we always talk about is what we call core. And it's called core for a reason. It is really this wonderful peer coaching experience where we do a lot of work to really break down the community into the right groups of 10. Those 10 women meet on a monthly basis. There's an executive coach in the room, and you're able to truly be able to work through your biggest professional and personal challenges, which I think is a really big differentiator versus other professional networks, which often are very transient, high-level relationships that you are building with people. This actually is an opportunity for you to not only have like the right vetted community of truly senior leadership, but also a experience that allows you to build deeper relationships and really dive into some of those biggest challenges.
Okay. And what do I have to do to get into this network?
You have to apply at chief.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first step. The second step is you need to be an experienced executive woman. And so we say VP through C-suite, but we're really looking for length, strength, impact of career. So we go through a vetted membership process where once you apply and you get through step one, we have you speak with one of our membership managers, dig into some of the details of your work history and career, but also really want to make sure people are here for the right reasons, right? Really want to make sure that we are creating a community of women executives who are here to support each other, to give as much as they get, and really look to taking that impact and bringing it back to their companies so they can create a ripple effect.
Okay. Interesting. VP and above, and then what other criteria to get in? Do you share your pricing? Is that publicly disclosed or?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have two different prices, one for VP level, which is $5,800. And then for our C level executives, it's $7,900. And a lot of times I think people will look at that and think, it seems like it might be more expensive. But for a company that is sponsoring this, it can be $30,000 for a 6-month engagement for an executive coach. You could spend just as much as what I was talking about for a 3-day conference. And so for companies, they look at this and say, okay, you get access to this community for a full year for that price. And, we talked about core, but in addition to core, you have access to a whole suite of events and programming that we put on. We've had everyone from Michelle Obama come speak to our community to the, leading business school professors. So just amazing programming that you have access to. You have access to the full community of 15,000 through our community product for you to be able to self-organize events, for you to be able to tap into them for resources or questions or recruiting, all sorts of things that you can tap into. And then in select cities in the US, we actually have some physical space as well.
Okay, interesting. What's the quick backstory? What were you guys doing before this and why did you start this?
Well, Lindsay and I were both executives ourselves in the startup scene. I started my startup career in e-commerce. I was at soap.com, which was a part of Quidsy, started by Mark Laurie, that got acquired by Amazon, went over to South Korea and worked on Coupang, which is now the Amazon of South Korea. And then most recently was at Handy, running all of operations for them. And Lindsay was the head of brand at Casper. So when I was starting to think about starting Chief, the idea of a women's professional network often can trigger images of pantsuits and name tags and warm white wine, and we really wanted to build something here that was really what our members deserved, a much more aspirational brand. And so I knew that Lindsay was the perfect partner for me. We had never worked together before, but we knew each other through the New York, startup ecosystem. And in my mind, I was like, if she can make a mattress sexy, then imagine what she can do for a women's startup network. So it was a really fun partnership for us to be able to go and start this together.
Okay, interesting. I guess, I've heard some similar stuff, like is that still around? They were sort of a co-working space, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there have been a number of different organizations that have, it's been exciting to see a number of different organizations that have stepped forward that have said, there's a big disparity in leadership across genders. And wouldn't it be great if we had more organizations in the ecosystem that is trying to solve that? So I think there have been a number of organizations that have emerged. I think for us, we have kind of a very specific lens on it in that we are focused on senior executive women. But I also think that, we are very much focused on community first and building this network and the value of the network, where a lot of other organizations have been more space oriented. And we often say, we are a community that happens to have a space, not a space that then tries to build community.
And again, there's lots of amazing women's companies, co-working spaces, networks out there. We didn't find in our careers one that felt like it was both vetted for senior executives as well as diverse in industry role function. Because when you get to this level in your career, I don't need to meet another startup marketer. I want a Rolodex full of people that are giving me very different POVs and can help me in the next iteration of my career and what I'm doing today at my company. So it becomes less about getting functional expertise and functional help and more about that depth you can really cultivate with people who are just as smart as you, just as experienced as you, but in different areas and from different industries.
Interesting. Is there like a mentor matchmaking between like the C-suite members and the VP members or something like that happening? Or
no, it's funny. We do think a lot about the fact that these women mentor so much. And that so much is asked from them. The more senior you go, the more mentorship requests come in.
Sure.
So we've thought a lot about mentoring. And right now, the way we do it is through these core groups. So we're putting 10 people together and they're really supporting and kind of co-mentoring and co-coaching and almost behaving as a personal board of directors to make sure that it feels equitable and we're not giving more of a burden to these women who are the busiest people in the world.
Right. Yeah, good. Okay, interesting. Good stuff. Pretty impressive you've grown that fast. Let's talk about raising money for this. So how much have you guys raised over how many rounds?
Yeah, we've raised about 140 million total at this point. And we just closed our Series B earlier this year. So we have had 3 rounds, our seed, our Series A, and our Series B.
Let's go chronologically. Tell me about the seed round. Where was the business when you started it? Was it just concept or a proof of concept or initial launch? And how did you fill it out? Was it angels, seed VCs? What was the scoop?
Yeah, so I think for Lindsay and I, because we had been in this startup ecosystem for a while, we had a number of relationships in the VC world that as we were going and raising early capital, we made the decision of, wanting to raise through VCs. And probably naively, we're like, oh, we know so many people. This is going to be easy. Joke was on us. So we were, we had definitely fleshed out the full business model. We had a few early members that were a part of it, but we hadn't officially launched. So it was a little bit in proof of concept of, we were testing things with some early members, but had not gone and done the full build of exactly what we wanted to launch with. And we went out and we're meeting with, as many VCs as we can get introductions to, and probably talk to hundreds of people in that round. And it wasn't easy. It was quite hard. I think similar to the questions that you asked.
It was a gut punch to our egos because there were so many no's.
So many no's.
Carolyn, you're being so kind. You're like, it wasn't easy.
Yeah, tell it.
Getting that many no's. And I think what's really hard about getting no's is I remember Carolyn and I have this like salient memory of we were in San Francisco. We were, taking all these meetings, and we went back to the hotel and took out the laptop and we were like, do we trash the deck? Do we redo the business model? Like, we just had this moment of what do we need to redo? Like this clearly isn't working. And so do we need to like rethink the business? And that I think is really tough as an entrepreneur, as a founder, to get that many no's. And instead of, continuing until you find that yes, every no just chips away at the confidence. Every no just kind of like creeps into every facet of decision making. That ultimately we didn't, by the way, change anything to that seed deck. We looked through it and we felt like we're not going to change anything. This is what we have to do. This is the vision. And I do love looking back at that seed deck and knowing it's very much still what we have executed and done today. Not to spoiler and jump ahead, but that deck hearing all of those no's and looking at that, slide deck in our hotel room, because it's just damaging to founders. It's really hard to move on and to get to a place where you have to behave confidently when you're just hearing no, but how can I help?
Yeah. Well, it is hard. You're talking to smart people. Like, you don't become a VC or investor unless you are pretty smart and probably had some success in some aspect of life, or at least gone to the right school, or whatever. So you're talking to smart people and they're telling you no. And yeah, I totally remember that, like having the doubts. Am I on the right track? Am I wasting my life doing this crazy business? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was even worse than that in some ways, because when I was first even establishing the company and was looking for even a lawyer to represent us to get it established right before we were going and fundraising, even some of the lawyers I talked to were like, I don't know that this is a VC backed business. This feels like a lifestyle business. So they even had some no's from lawyers that you were trying to pay. Right. So it was definitely, it takes a lot. It's probably by far the darkest days, I think, that we have experienced as entrepreneurs. I'm sure people have had other moments throughout the journey, but to me, I look at that point when you have no market validation yet of people really wanting this. It is just kind of the two of you. I think it's, especially for co-founders, I think it's a really hard time of, from the relationship of do we change things? What do we do? And it's just so much of your reputation feels on the line without a lot of extra voices around you. You don't have an additional team. You don't have initial backers. You don't even have initial market reaction because we hadn't launched yet. So by far, probably the hardest point for us was in those early seed rounds of funding.
So what led to a yes? Who said yes, and how did you get a yes? And then what happened?
Yeah, well, we ended up getting two great partners that really focus in on seed rounds. So it was Primary Ventures, which focuses on the New York ecosystem, and Primary is a VC fund that I have worked with in the past, and so had a really good relationship with them. And then it was co-led by Flybridge, who also have a really deep perspective on community. A lot of what they invest in is from a community angle. And so we ended up finding people who this idea really resonated with. And I think we were probably a little too broad in a lot of the outreach that we had done versus finding people that would really understand what we were building. And in hindsight, having a yes from the wrong person who didn't understand that, who would then be in the boardroom, who would continue to, push you in a direction that wasn't in line with what you wanted to build, could have been disastrous for us. So I think we got very lucky to have some really great partners after a lot of rounds of no.
Interesting. Well, I was going to ask, did you go after, and I think Flybridge has this, or they have an offshoot. Did you go after some of these emerging female focused venture funds as a strategy? Yeah.
We did. Like I said, we were pretty broad.
Yeah.
We were asking everyone. XFactor is the Flybridge counterpart, and they put in a small check as part of it as well. After we had originally pitched to Flybridge, they made the introduction over to XFactor. But I think there was, to be honest, I think part of the struggle that we had was because we were a women-focused organization. As we were pitching VCs that were women focused, a lot of them already had things in their portfolio that would actually be, not directly competitive, but enough for them.
One could argue it's competitive, competitive vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I also think that women VCs get pitched with every woman-led business.
Sure.
And so we had trouble raising from women VCs. I don't fault any of those investors because they see these types of ideas all day long. They have a stuffed portfolio. And so I take zero, personal, feelings of disappointment from that, because I absolutely understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. Excellent. Well, any other tales from the seed round, or should we move on to the next Series A, I guess? Sounds like things started to change a little bit and get maybe easier, but you tell the story.
Yeah. So we raised that round basically to allow us to launch. And we officially announced that fundraise and that Chief was going to be built in October of 2018. And I think that was the moment where this idea for Lindsay and I that came from a personal place, we realized was a need that was much broader. And we built almost overnight just a wait list of thousands, which was pretty remarkable. And we started to bring on early members and officially launched membership at the very beginning of 2019. And between, the great engagement from early members, as people were actually using the services, we were getting great feedback, that we decided to go and raise our Series A a lot earlier than we ever expected to. I don't think either of us were imagining another fundraise in 2019. And I think we were in one of those fortunate places of, we didn't need to raise. It wasn't we're going to run out of capital at a certain period of time and the clock is running, we need to go raise. But we were seeing such great engagement and traction that we wanted to start to expand. At that point, were just in New York City. And so we wanted to expand into some new geographies. And so at the April of 2019, we went out and started to have conversations around our Series A. And it was like night and day.
Because you had traction and moment and growth.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, we walked back into those offices like hot shots.
Yeah, there was actually something very nice about that round in particular, because a lot of the people that we talked to for the seed and that we talked to for the Series A, there was a lot of the same people, honestly. Okay. And so it was actually nice. At the end of that round, I think we had 8 term sheets before we actually stopped the process. There's, some really big name, top tier VCs that we actually didn't even go to the partner meeting because we were like, we know who we're going to go with. And so it's kind of a nice moment for us in that one to be able to, have a conversation with people that had said no to us in the seed and say, well, we're going to go a different direction this time.
Sure, absolutely. And was that purely a function of just growth and traction, or your confidence, or both, or something else, like that leverage, that power?
I wish it was just our confidence, Nathan, that did it. I wish we walked into the room and they were like, wow, they're bringing like hot shit energy. But it was, listen, pre-launch, like it's just such a crapshoot. Like it's such a gamble when you're a seed investor. And I think the feedback we constantly heard was, I really like you too. I like the business, but like, this is a tough business to run. And so to, months later to see that traction, clearly it worked. Right. And so all of the doubt of, will this work, suddenly eviscerated. And what was left was, a stellar business. 2 founders that were already have history in startups and there was some belief in, and a massive opportunity. And I think that's what was so exciting, was to see like, this is working so quickly. What does opportunity look like as we look into the growth of Chief?
Can you share what your sort of, core KPI was at that point? I don't know if it was membership growth or retention, or, what was it that was like?
So, I think it was both sides of it. It was definitely on the member acquisition side of, the fact that completely through word of mouth, we now had a huge wait list. And when you looked at the members who were joining us, I actually remember a conversation with an early VC that was like, so are these just all the friends that you and Lindsay have that are now members? We're like, we don't have this many friends. And like, they are not paying to be a part of this. So it was actually really lovely to be able to show just some amazing, amazing early members that joined us that really were coveting something like this themselves. So I don't think it was just like the growth as much as an amazing group of founding members in New York City and an equally amazing wait list of people that were looking to join. And then probably, it's an annual membership fee. So we hadn't had any retention numbers yet, since we had just launched at the beginning of 2019. But we could really look at engagement with all of our services. So we looked at, what is the attendance for any of the programming that we're doing, for core, for the events, everything that we're doing. What is the engagement in the digital product? What is our NPS? And all of those were just so strong that it really showed a really full picture of what we were trying to create. And I remember, to Lindsay's point, like some of the early conversations in seed, I remember one conversation in particular that was, we're seed investors in a lot of companies, D2C brands that just have to build one product and ship it to their customers. And you guys are trying to build, you've got core, you've got the digital product, you've got all of the events and programming. That's like all individually unique services that are trying to be built. And it actually felt hard and complicated to people. And as they were actually able to see us execute on that, I think it really changed people's perceptions.
Very cool. Who led that round?
So that was co-led by General Catalyst, and it was Ken Chenault who joined our board after, who, is, somebody who himself focuses so much on diversity and business doing good. It was just such a clear alignment of somebody joining us as a lead investor. Not to mention,
Amex? Did he come from Amex?
Yeah, not to mention his Amex background, which as a membership model has some overlap as well. And then it was co-led by Inspired Capital with Alexa Von Tobel, the founder of LearnVest, joining as well.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I don't want to keep you too long, but let's jump ahead to the most recent round. Any interesting anecdotes there, or just kind of more of the same, better, bigger, better, or what? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, we had a lot of what we were doing pre-pandemic was very in person, and we had to do a major pivot over 2020 into a fully virtual experience. And we were very nervous about that as we were going through that. And what we found was that like engagement went up even more. And now you didn't have to, trek across the city to get to a physical space to do things with us, that like you could actually tap into the value of Chief no matter where you are. And so it actually unlocked for us so much potential of all the different services that we can provide and how we could go to market as we started to expand into additional cities. And, we were doing a city by city launch model for much of 2020 and 2021. And right at the beginning of this year, we were ready to fully launch nationally. And so now anybody from across the US can join. And I think for us, there was just so much momentum with that launch that we thought this is kind of I think it's smart to go and raise money when you are in a position of strength and you're really showing some really amazing trajectory. And that was a really nice moment for us to be able to go and do that, which is why we decided to do it at the beginning of this year as we had that launch. Hindsight is 2020 of really glad we did it at the beginning of the year, because obviously the markets have changed considerably. But I would also say that we were, a business that has been really conscious about, capital allocation, in that we were also in a place of we didn't have to go and fundraise at the beginning of this year. We would only do it if we really found the right partner who really understood and aligned with our mission and what we were trying to build. And so we were, having those conversations and just kind of fell in love with Layla Sturdy, who led the round out of CapG. And she is somebody who just cares really deeply about leadership development and has been a part of programs and communities that are really focused on leadership. And there was just such deep alignment there that we were excited to complete our Series B at the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
And our PR team did tell us that this is the fastest women-founded company to hit unicorn ever.
Oh, wow. Fastest women-founded company to hit unicorn. That's exciting.
So it's a good thing we raised it earlier, Carolyn. Or else we would be the second fastest, which doesn't sound as good to me.
That's congratulations on that. All right, last question. So it's sort of a multi-choice question. What advice, if you were doing this all over again, what advice would you tell your younger selves, or what advice would you tell female founders looking to raise capital, or any other general advice you'd like to share with folks that might be listening? So.
I think there's probably a few things that I would point to. I honestly think that one of the most helpful things is just to hear that it is not easy for anyone. And in every single round that we had, we did have no's. There's not a single round where you just have a 100% hit rate, and it always hurts. And everybody goes through it. And even the, startups that you hear the most about and are the biggest out there, they've gotten them too. And I think there's just such solidarity to be had in the fact that, it is tough for everyone, particularly in those early days where you just don't have as much of that feedback, and to stay true to what you want to build despite that. And as Lindsay mentioned, we look back at that seed deck and not much has changed. People will ask us all the time, like, what are the big pivots that you had to do as you were learning? And the amazing part is that what we had in our minds and what we wanted to build is what has been built and what continues to resonate. And I actually look back at it and think we could have really jeopardized something that can be really meaningful if we had just been listening to every bit of feedback from somebody who has literally created 30 minutes to an hour of headspace for us. So you're thinking about it a lot more than they are, and to really stay true, to really make sure that you are taking feedback, but not jeopardizing your vision as part of it.
That's good. Lindsay, anything you want to add on that? Or yeah,
I think in business, the relationships you hold with people are everything. And so even when you get that no, I don't take it personally, right? This person is doing their job and making a decision to hit what numbers they need to hit. And so I believe before you go raise, after you raise, and everything in between, to hold on to the connections you make with people, to value them, to know that a great connection should never feel transactional, and that your career is long. So value the relationships you're making and ensure that you are showing up when people are looking for your advice, so you can, offer the same for them.
Yeah, good. Well, last question. Will there be any component within Chief for female founders looking to connect with investors? Is that on the roadmap at all, or anything like that?
Well, it's happening already. I'll say it's happening organically. We have a lot of community groups. So it is happening within the Chief organization. Again, we have 15,000 members. We have some incredible startup founders. We have women who are investors who write giant checks. So that is happening. I think it's a great area for us to explore what that looks like if we were to, make that a little bit more formal, but TBD.
TBD. Cool. I'm dying to know how much you paid for the domain name Chief. You probably don't want to discose that, but
Carolyn got it for my birthday.
I can't believe you brought that up.
It was a birthday present.
Lindsay's birthday is on Friday. But
listen, I'm Chief Brand Officer. I was like, I need chief.com. That is a domain. We got to get it.
Well, it was very expensive when we were broke, for sure. And so it was always kind of on our minds of, okay, if we're going to do this, we should do it right before we announce our Series A, because we couldn't afford it on the seed round, but maybe it was just too much of a percentage of what we raised. But maybe as we thought about our Series A, we can do it before like it's public and therefore they ask for more, which is what we then went and did. But I like to pretend that I bought it for Lindsay's birthday so that I never have to worry about a gift from here on out.
And we can't disclose the number because it would be rude for me to know how much.
That's right.
Although I do know how much. It's a good deal. It was a good deal.
Excellent. All right. Well, people want to learn more. Chief.com, pretty easy, nice short 5-letter domain. And I guess they can apply to, is it a wait list or
there is a wait list. We do welcome you to apply to chief.com. It's a pretty easy application. And so can't get off that wait list until you apply. So
cool.
Get on now.
So you're number 15,001.
And if you're not applying, definitely send it to the executive women you know to make sure that if you're not a woman executive, I'm sure you know a few.
Yep. I'll send it to my wife. She's off on a big high-powered business trip while my kids are here giving me the dirty eye, evil eye.
Sounds like she needs Chief. And it sounds like you need a babysitter.
It's something like that. Yeah. I don't know. We're doing something wrong. I'm not sure. But anyway, perfect. Thank you so much. Chief.com. Lindsay and Carolyn, this is good stuff. And we'll catch you after your Series C round, see how things are going there.
No pressure. Take care. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.